Sadashivasamadhamam Shankaracharyamanyamam Asmadacharyaparyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviram Bhavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Okay, we are on verse number 26. And I hope you remember which chapter. It's chapter number 6. So we will chant Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Yato Yato Nischarati.
Yato Nischarati.
Manaschanchalamastheram.
Manaschalamasthiram.
Tatastato niyamaitat. Atmanyeva vasham nayet. Okay. So, first just the word meanings. Chanchalam asthiram. So you have to break the word of the last word of the first line. Manaha chanchalaha asthiraha. Manaha chanchalam asthiram. Both asthiram and chanchalam are visheshanam, adjectives for manaha, the mind. So asthiram means unsteady, sthiram means steady, asthiram means unsteady, chanchalam means moving. So that mind, which is chanchalam asthiram, which is moving and therefore unsteady, yataha yataha, for whatever reasons. So yataha yataha, whatever reasons that mind is unsteady. Why is it unsteady? Nischarati, it goes out to those objects. Okay, so this is the reason for the unsteadiness of the mind. You see some objects which you like, for which there is raga dvesha, raga mostly, dvesha is also there. And the mind therefore goes towards that objects and therefore it is moving and unsteady. What is the remedy? Tataha tataha. So tataha tataha has to be connected to yataha yataha. Yataha yataha is whatever objects or whatever reasons. Tataha tataha means from those objects and from those reasons, niyamya, restrain the mind. What should you do? Etat nayet, bring it back, bring that mind back. Atmani vasham eva, under your control. Atmani here is under your control. So bring that mind back under your control. So very, very important sloka, defining what the mind is and what are the problems. And Krishna is saying that when the mind is dwelling on any object, that is the distraction. And therefore, if you have to apply it for the Nididhyasanam discussion we are doing, Krishna is saying that even when the mind is dwelling on the teaching, is dwelling on the shastric teaching, remember, distractions are bound to come. Therefore, never judge yourself and say that, oh, I am sitting in meditation and I am unable to meditate, I am no good, I'm a failure. All those things should not happen. Because you are not alone with this problem. Everybody's mind is restless. Everyone has the problem. It's a universal problem, which is the reason that Krishna is dealing with it. So, chanchala manaha nischarati. That restless, extroverted mind, nischarati, will go away. Yataha yataha, towards the various sense objects which are distracting the mind. right? And you can classify these sense objects under Shabdadi Panchakam. Shabdadi Panchakam means words, etc. Panchakam, the 5 things which are words, etc., which is what? Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So whenever we say Shabdadi Panchakam, remember we are saying Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. All Anatma can be classified under one of these 5. And this mind, it starts moving, it races from one object to another. Like when you are in deep meditation, if your neighbor is cooking biryani, then that smell of the biryani, what will happen? Your mind goes to the last restaurant where you ate biryani, right? And then when you go to the restaurant when the mind goes to the restaurant where you ate biryani, you will remember that. How did you go there? I went in my car. And then when you went in your car, then you will remember that the car has to be given for servicing. And then you will say, oh, this car is so old and I need a new car. And for the new car, you need to go to your bank balance. This is the way the mind moves. Apparently, unconnected areas, but there is always a logic, right? So the mind moves from object to object, making you distracted. And Krishna is saying that this is very natural to the mind. It is the way in which the mind is built. And therefore, please don't feel guilty. Instead, look for a solution. When the mind is distracted, what should one do? So, a good question is, when does any object distract me? Now, and to understand that, let me replace that object with anatma. The word object can be replaced with anatma. So the question I should ask is, when does any anatma distract my mind? Right? What is the answer?
It comes under our senses, in touch with the senses.
Any other answer?
When I identify with it.
When my mind is not restrained.
When I have a desire for it.
No, it converts to mamakara and ahamkara and so disturbs me.
All are good answers. But there is a better answer, a Vedantic answer. Okay.
Creation of a vritti in my mind because of the object? Does
No.
that distract me?
An anatma will distract you only if you take it as satyam. Why? What does the statement mean? That anatma can distract you only when you have given that anatma the status of satyam. We are talking about satyam mithya. What does it mean? If something is distracting me, that something has to be different from me, right? And if something is different from me, then there are 2 satyams, me and that something. But what is the real status of anatma? It is mithya, which is not different from me, the satyam. Because mithya anatma cannot distract me. Why? Because it is nothing other than me, right? So whenever the mind is disturbed, remember that you have granted the status of satyam onto the object. How do I know whether I am taking an object as satyam or mithya? Very simple. The answer is implicit there. If that object disturbs you, you have taken it as satyam. And therefore, you should ask yourself, is that object or person who is disturbing me, is that really satyam or mithya? And then if it is mithya, what should you do? Tataha niyamya. From those very objects, I should withdraw the mind, right? Now there are 2 ways of doing it. One is the method by which you say that it doesn't belong to me and therefore I have no ownership and therefore it should not disturb me, because things which you have no ownership over, there is no mamakara and it should not disturb you. So you say, I don't have ownership. Even if you are living in your house and the house is disturbing me, the disturbance comes because you consider that you own the house, right? And therefore, just consider that you are a trustee for the house. For the purpose of worldly transactions, I may have a house, a car, I may have a wife, a husband, but I should be a trustee only. Because ownership is the cause of obsession. Obsession is the cause of distraction. And why is it important? Because ownership means mamakara. Mamakara leads to obsession with objects and people. Obsession is the cause of distraction. And distraction is the pratibandha, is the obstacle in nidhi dhyasana. And therefore, my flow of thoughts. Remember, flow of thoughts are driven by your nature usually. For a non-Vedantic, you will have what we call involuntary thoughts. Thoughts which just pop into your mind without your necessarily having invited them. So those are involuntary thoughts. They are driven by your vasanas. Okay. What is the difference between vasana and karma phalam? Anybody?
Vasana can be pulled. Karma phalam cannot be changed.
We can't hear you, Manmohan. Anybody wants to
Karma
ask the question?
affects you as a bhokta and vasana affects you as the karta.
Very good. Remember, both are basically arising out of previous karma only. Okay. So both are karma phalam. We give them different names because karma phalam affects you as an experiencer, as a bhokta, but vasana affects you as a karta, as the doer. And therefore, because it is affecting you as a doer, it affects the flow of your thoughts. And so Krishna is saying that that is the distraction. As long as there is an obsession, there is a vasana, you are driven by that obsession, by that vasana, and therefore the distractions will be there. Therefore, let the vrittis, let the flow of your thoughts not be driven by vasana. Make a conscious effort. All flow of thoughts should be arising out of my agami, out of my own free will, swe ichha. The mind which is driven by your vasana, that mind is your master. Remember, a vasana driven mind is always my master. I am always a slave to the vasana driven mind. But a free will driven mind is always my slave. And therefore, tataha niyamya. Bring the mind back from that vasana driven obsession. Then what? Atmani eva vasham dayet. Bring the mind back to the contemplation. The mind which is driven by your free will is the mind which is your slave. That mind will obey you, and therefore use that mind to focus on your real nature, on your true nature. And there is a beautiful piece of advice in Drik Drishya Vivekaha, a text which some of you have attended the classes. It says, Yatra yatra manoyati, tatra tatra samadhaya. It's lovely advice on how to bring the mind back to the Atma. So, yatra yatra manoyati, wherever the mind wanders to, tatra tatra samadhi. Don't make an effort to withdraw the mind. After all, the mind's nature is to keep on wandering, right? One day it will be in Pizza Hut, one day it will be in cave, somewhere else. One day it will be in Himalayas, one day it will be in your mall. How many times will you bring the mind back? How many times will you try to control the mind? And therefore, don't make an effort to control the mind. Rather than that, he says, tatra tatra samadhayaha. Yatra yatra means to whichever object the mind wanders, tatra tatra samadhaya. Do samadhi on that. Let the mind have samadhi on that. Focus on that. Focusing what? Look at the object, right? Let us say that your mind has wandered to a very, very tasty pizza in Pizza Hut, right? The natural tendency is I'm meditating, oh my God, my mind is looking at this very tasty cheese pizza. But don't worry about it. Krishna says, look at that object. Analyze the cheese pizza. What do you find? You will find there is a form, cheese, and the whatever makes up the pizza, and there is a name which is called cheese pizza. So there is a name and form, the cheese pizza, but the cheese pizza exists, and therefore there is name, form, and existence. The cheese pizza is existing. It's got nama rupa plus existence, and whatever has existence, is that object different from the Atma? Can the cheese pizza exist apart from existence? No, right? You will find that cheese pizza is mithya and existence is a satyam. So every object, remember, has got the namarupa and the existence consciousness. So Atma plus namarupa is the constitution of every object. And whichever object your mind wanders to, look at the object, analyze the object, and realize that there is the name and form, and there is existence consciousness principle, which is Atma. You will find that object is mithya. And what is the truth of that mithya? What is the substratum of that mithya? It is a satyam, which is the Atma, which is, who is the Atma? You yourself. And when you focus on the Nama Rupa pizza and forget about the Nama Rupa, what is left? Left is the Atma, which is you. And in this manner, you are getting back to the Atma. Because without having to pull the mind back, you have analyzed the object. You have realized the object is not different from Atma. And in that manner, your mind has focused back onto the Atma. And look at the beauty of this particular, process. The very distraction which took your mind away from your Nididhyasanam. What is Nididhyasanam? Focusing on the Atma. And the very distraction which took you away from that focusing, you see that distraction as not separate from Atma. And in that manner, your mind comes back to the Atma. The distraction is gone. And thus, every distraction, what should you do? You should convert into mithya. Look at every distraction as Namarupa plus Satyam plus Atma. So when you ignore the Namarupa, the distraction becomes the Atma, which is the very object of Nididhyasana. In this manner, you will see that no object can ever distract, right? And one point here. When you are thinking of Atma as consciousness, what is the tendency? I close my eyes to try to focus and appreciate that. But when I understand that consciousness is not different from existence, then everything that I see becomes existence alone. It becomes open-eyed meditation. Everything I see is Chit and Sat alone. And therefore Krishna says here, Tathasthato Niyamya. Bring your mind back. Shankara gives a brief explanation of this tatasthato. How do you bring the mind back? Shankara says there are 3 steps. Okay, very important little piece of interpretation. There are 3 steps in bringing this mind back from an object of distraction back to your Atma, which is meditation. Right. The first one is yatharmya nirupanam. Yathatmya nirupanam. Right? Yathatmya nirupanam means nirupanam is an examination. Yathatmyam means just as it is, really as it is. So yathatmya nirupanam means seeing something after examination really as it is, seeing the fact. What is the fact? Every object is a mix of vyavaharika and paramarthika. So the nirupanam, the examination, the meditation on the object, what should it reveal to you? Yathatmyam. The fact of the object as it really is, vyavaharika plus paramarthika, which means what? Vyavaharika means nama rupa, paramarthika means satchit ananda. Right? So that first step is see the object as it really is, a mixture of nama rupa and atma. Every object is a mixture of nama rupa. Atma is the first step to be understood after my analysis. Second step is what? He says abhasi karanam. Understand the nama rupa as abhasaha, as if of no serious consequence really. So yathatmya nirupanam, abhasi karanam. 2 steps. First is to see it as it really is, mixture of nama rupa and atma. Second is to understand nama rupa as of no consequence, as mithya. And third is vairagya bhavana. Mithya does not deserve any ragadvesha, because mithya means that which has got no independent existence. And why should you have ragadesha for something which has no independent existence? And in the Shastram, we have 2 examples, One is Raju Sarpa, the rope snake. And one is called Shukti Rajatam, the silver, the shell in the water, which is being seen as silver. I don't know if you all are familiar with that. Rope snake, everybody is familiar with. But there is another example which is often given, that you underwater something, there's a shell lying, a seashell is lying under the water, and the sunlight is glancing off, reflecting off the seashell, making it very bright, and you think it is silver. Okay. So why does Shastra use 2 examples? Because the rope snake is used for dvesha, because you're afraid of the snake. The Shukti Rajakam, the silver shell, is used for raga, because everybody likes bright and attractive things. And Shankara says that once the ragadvesha is dropped, when do you drop it? When you understand that that object is nama rupa only, it is mithya only, and for mithya objects do not really deserve any ragadvesha. And that dropping of the ragadvesha is called vairagyam. Why is it important, this particular issue? Because any object towards which I have vairagyam, towards which I am dispassionate, that object has no power over your mind. The reason why we talk about vairagyam is that whatever you are dispassionate towards, that object has no power to either give you any distraction or to empower or to enslave your mind. Your mind will be indifferent. And therefore, when the mind has no power, when the object has no power over your mind, because of vairagyam, what happens? Your mind is no longer distracted. Your mind is freely available for Nididhyasana. Very, very important verse. Any questions here before we proceed to the next verse? Okay. So we will look at verse number 27. We will chant. Prashantamanasam hyenam
प्रशान्तमनसं हीनं
yoginam sukhamuttamam
योगिनं सुखमुत्तमम्
upaiti shantarajasam
उपैति शान्तरजसं
brahma bhutama kalmasham.
ब्रह्मभूतमकल्मषम्
Okay, it's brahma bhutama kalmasham, right? Not bhutam kalmasham. Bhutam akalmasham. So, yenam yoginam hi. Indeed. He means indeed. It's an expression of certainty. Indeed. Enam yoginam. To this yogi, who is what? Akalmasham. Free from kalmasham. Free from kalmasham means impurities. Free from impurities. And shanta rajasam. Whose rajasic part of his mind, rajas, has become shantam. Rajasic tendencies have come down, and therefore, prashanta manasam, the mind is prashantam, mind is quiet and tranquil, and that yogi, Brahma Bhutam, so Bhutam here is in the nature of, has become Brahman itself. That yogi who is free from impurities, whose rajasic tendencies have come down, whose mind is totally prashantam, tranquil, and who has become Brahman himself, what happens? Uttamam sukham upaiti. The highest happiness he gets. So what is the result of Nididhyasanam? Okay, so far, how to do Nididhyasanam has been mentioned. Here, Dhyana phalam. Nididhyasana phalam is being mentioned. And he says, Prashanta manasam yenam uttamam sukham upaiti. Uttamam sukham means the greatest peace, the highest peace. And you will see that in the next sloka also, he talks about the same thing by saying, Atyantam sukham mashnute. Highest peace. Now we have to carefully understand what is meant by sukham. Ananda. So this is very important for us, because unless you know that there are two types of ananda, you can get confused in your meditation, right? So I'm sure most of you all already know this, but I'll try to explain. One is pratibimba ananda. What is pratibimbam?
Mirror.
A reflection.
Pratibimbam is a reflection, right? So what happens in dhyanam, in nididhyasanam, your mind is quiet because you are focusing, thoughts have come down, and therefore the mind is quiet, tranquil, very sattvic. And therefore in that sattvic mind, your ananda, which is your nature, is reflected, right? How does this mind become sattvic? Because there are three gunas, sattvic, rajas and tamas. How does it remain sattvic? Because of the focus of the mind, where Krishna has said, niyamya, bringing back the mind from mental disturbances, from mental diversions. And those diversions are caused by what? By Rajoguna. So by continuously bringing the mind back from your disturbances, Rajoguna is being brought down. And by staying focused and not falling asleep, Tamoguna is being brought down. So Tamo and Rajo have been brought down by the practice. What remains is Sattva. And hence this Sattva mind has a thought which is known as Shanta Vrittihi. This Shanta Vrittihi, this is the reflection of Atma Ananda. And this is called Pratibimba Ananda, also known as Kosha Ananda, from the five koshas. So as the mind becomes more and more tranquil, the quality of the Pratibimba Ananda, the quality of the reflected Ananda, it improves. But we should remember that even if that reflected Ananda, that Pratibimba Ananda, even if it increases 1,000,000 times, what should you always remember?
It goes away when
Goes
It
away,
Goes
time
away.
bound.
It
It is
is
not absolute.
agama apayanaha. It arrives and it will go. It arrives when meditation is there. It arrives when the mind is quiet. It goes away when the mind is disturbed or when meditation is over. And therefore, it is conditional peace. Condition being, my mind has to have peace. Therefore, if the peaceful mind, if Pratibhava Ananda is reflected, conditional peace is never real peace, is what Shastra teaches us. And that is one Vedantic lesson that we should always take away from the teaching. Anything conditional is fake. It is not real. For example, many people say that I feel secure because I have got lot of wealth. I've got lot of money. This is conditional security, right? You have to say because of money, I am secure. And that because of is the problem. What does it mean? If the money goes away, my security also goes away. And therefore, security comes when I have got money, and security goes when I have no money. That security is not real security, it is fake security. Okay, so that is Pratibimba Ananda. Then the second Ananda is Atma Ananda, and that is why Krishna uses the word Uttamam and Atyantam. Uttamam in this verse, Atyantam in the next verse. Uttamam means non-conditional. Conditional is dependent upon is apekshika, and therefore Uttamam means nirapekshika, not dependent. Uttamam is something which has no dependence on anything. Nirapeksha. So, Shankara defines Uttamam as nir atishayam. Okay. What does it mean? In Sanskrit grammar, there are two suffixes, tara and tama. Okay, they are added to a word to indicate degrees of comparison. So tara and tama are both degrees of comparison, tama being higher than tara. And these suffixes are pratyayas. They are called suffixes. But suffix means pratyaya, and the name for suffix is pratyaya in Sanskrit. And this is called a atishayana pratyaya, this kind of suffixes. And therefore he says nir atishayam, that which is independent of these kind of prefixes, not subject to comparative degrees at all. There are no degrees of comparison applicable to a niratishayam vastu. Therefore, having no gradation at all. Why is it so important? Because Pratibimba Ananda is always subject to gradation. And the Ananda mentioned here is not Pratibimba Ananda, it is not experienced Ananda, it is not Anubhava Ananda. And therefore, he says, Uttamam. This is the highest Ananda, Atma Ananda itself. And where is it going to come? Prashanta Manasam. The one whose mind is focused on Vedantic thoughts. What is a thought? I am Ananda unconditionally. My Ananda is not dependent upon my mind. Therefore, I am permanently peaceful. Even when the mind is sorrowful. Sorrowful means what? The mind is having a dukkha vritti. A sorrowful thought is there in the mind. Even at that point of time, remember, Atma Ananda is present. It's a very, very important concept. Even if you are weeping, buckets of tears, some tragedy in your life, when you are crying away to glory, remember that Atma Ananda has not gone away. It is there because it is your very nature. And that is why in the 14th chapter of this Gita itself, you will find that Krishna says, Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava na dveshti sampravattani na nivrattani kankshati. He says this jnani, he does not dislike brightness, he does not dislike activity, he does not even dislike delusion, right? And he does not long for them once they have gone. He is okay with them coming, he is okay with them going. And the Shanta Vritti in which your Atma Ananda is reflected, remember that Shanta Vritti is there when the mind is Satvik, right? But since the mind is Anatma, Anatma is three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, you cannot have a mind where the Shanta Vritti, the Sattvic state of the mind will exist all the time. So Rajas will come, Tamas will come. In the mind, Rajasic Vrittis will be there, Tamasic Vrittis are also bound to come and go. But throughout this, whether there is Shanta Vritti, Sattvic Vritti, whether there is Rajasic Vritti, whether there is Tamasic Vritti, you should remember all the time that I am Ananda Swarupa. Okay. Now, supposing you say, fine, but you are saying that Ananda Swarupa, Bimbananda, the OC is your nature. It is present all the time. But then doesn't it contradict this particular statement, Uttamam Sukham Upaiti? Because Upaiti means coming, which has come. And therefore, if your Swarupam is Ananda, Uttamam Sukham is what? Atmananda only. So that's what we explained just now. The word Uttamam Sukham itself means Atmananda. And if you are saying that I am Atmananda, you are saying I am the very Swarupam of Atmananda. Ananda is my very nature. And by the definition of nature, it cannot come and go. It is present all the time. And if that is so, then how can Krishna say Uttamam Sukham Upaiti? Because Upaiti means to come and go, or to come basically. Uttamam Sukham means Atmananda. So Krishna is saying Atmananda will come. Is there not a contradiction? So Shankara says, no, there is no contradiction. Upaiti means you have to understand Upaiti as dropping the idea that I am samsari, or dropping the idea that I am dukhi, that I am sorrowful, which means, in other words, dropping the idea that I am in triangular format. Dropping the triangular format is Upaiti. Okay. And where did we hear this? Remember, Nididhyasanam is not the place where you are hearing that you are Atma. That hearing that I am Atma has been told in Shravanam. Hearing that you are the non-experienceable Ananda Swarupa has been told to us in Shravanam. So it is not a new idea. But in Nididhyasanam, I am going to invoke that idea. And therefore, invocation or remembering the teaching is not for Jnanam. But Jnanam has been received during Shravanam. Very important idea, because a lot of people, a lot of texts talk about moksha during meditation. Meditation does not give you any knowledge. This Nididhyasanam is only for invoking that, what you have already learned during Shravanam. And when you invoke that, what are you doing? You are strengthening what you have heard during Shravanam. You are removing the Viparita Bhavana. What is the Viparita Bhavana? I am samsari. Remember that samsari can become dukhi or sukhi. Mind can become sorrowful or happy. But I can be neither. And therefore, as a jnani, as an advanced Vedantic student, During your Nididhyasanam, the words happy and unhappy have to be deleted from your vocabulary. Nididhyasanam is to bring a transformation in your life. And if your life has to transform, what should transform? Your thinking pattern has to transform. Every thought in your mind has to change. Because every single problem that you have, anger, jealousy, frustration, is what? Nothing but thoughts alone. Right? One thought is not what we call life. One happy thought you may have, that is not life. Because life is all the thoughts put together. Just like a building is not one brick, but all the bricks put together. And if the building is not good, and you say, I have to change the building, what is it that you have to change? The bricks itself, you have to replace. And therefore, if you have to change your life, the very building blocks of your life are the thoughts. That thoughts, the thinking process itself has to change, which is a very time-consuming process. Time is required, effort is required, and that sustained effort over a very long period of time, that is called Nididhyasana. And once I have done that, completed this effort over a sustained period of time, what is the state of my mind? Prashanta Manasa. Mind is free from unhealthy thoughts, anxiety, fear, jealousy. And how do I do that? In Nididhyasanam, I look at every thinking pattern that I have, every unhealthy thinking pattern that I have. I consciously and deliberately handle those thoughts, those patterns during my Nididhyasana. Right? I have thoughts even after that. Even after I've handled all my unhealthy thoughts, your mind is not free of thoughts. You will still have thoughts, but the thoughts are undisturbing thoughts. How? For example, this class which we are listening to, it's an example. I have presented all ideas how? As thoughts. All the ideas which I have talked about have remained in your mind how? As thoughts only, but they are not disturbing your mind, right? They are all thoughts which are virtuous thoughts, Shastra-driven thoughts, and therefore they don't disturb your mind. And therefore, disturbing thoughts in your mind have to be replaced by non-disturbing thoughts. And when that is done, it is Shanta Vritti, also called Sattvika Vritti. Right? So they say, Ashantasya Mano Bharaha. The mind becomes a burden for a person who is Ashantaha, who does not have peace of mind. And how do I do these things? By Nididhyasanam. I am re-looking into all the teachings by the torchlight of Krishna's teaching. And therefore he says, Yoginam. The one who is engaged in Nididhyasanam, Shanta Rajasam, who has reduced his rajasic tendencies, rajasic thoughts, disturbing thoughts, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, all these he has brought down. And if you are talking about other shastrams, you can look at Yoga Shastra, 5 kleshas: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Avidya means ignorance. Asmita is ahankara. Abhinivesha is deha abhimana. And all this is indicated by Shankara by saying moha adi. When I have got ignorance, I am claiming my body, mind, sense complex as myself, not Atma, which means it is adhyasa, and that is moha itself, right? And when I have adhyasa, I become a jiva. Therefore, moha can be understood as the idea that I am a jiva and not Atma. So, moha is jiva bhavaha. Jiva bhavaha means what? I am in triangular format. What is the very purpose of Nididhyasanam? To negate the triangular format and to put me into binary format. Remember the words Jivan Mukti and also Videha Mukti. They are words found only in the triangular format. Why? In the binary format, only Atma and Anatma is there. There is no Jiva. Right? In the triangular format, Jiva Jagat Ishvara is there, and therefore the Jiva needs Mukti. Jiva needs liberation. Jiva needs moksha. But in the binary format, Atma Anatma is there. There is no Jiva at all. When there is no Jiva, where is the question of Jivan Mukti? And if there is no Jivan Mukti, where is the question of Videha Mukti? In the binary format, you only have one claim. Aham Nitya Muktaha. That Aham Nitya Muktaha is Brahma Bhava. I was always liberated. I was always free. In triangular format, you are yearning for freedom. You are a sadhaka. In binary format, you are Brahman. You are Atma. So Kalmasha here has to be understood as Tamasic Vritti. Tamasic Vritti means Moha Vritti. Shankaracharya defines Kalmasha as an obsession, as a fascination for false things. So he says Mohadi Kleshaha, based on one's Ragadvesha. And Akalmasham is a person who is not bound by Ragadvesha, who is not a slave in the hands of his Ragadvesha. Which means what? Akalmasham means there is no prarabdha at all. He is prarabdha varjitam. Prarabdha is where? For a jiva only. Therefore, akalmasham means he is not a jiva anymore, which is why binary format. Because only the jiva and triangular format can say that I am being thrown here and there by the winds of prarabdha. And therefore, this Nididhyasana yogi is Brahma Bhutam. He has become one with Brahman, which means instead of claiming his body and mind as I, he is claiming Brahman as I. He doesn't disrespect the body and the mind. He uses them as instruments of transactions and Vyavaharika. But he knows that I am the consciousness behind these instruments. This shift of vision from Jiva Bhava to Brahma Bhava, this is called Brahma Bhutam. This is the net result of Nididhyasana. So with that, we will stop here. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
Acharya ji.
Yes, Joe.
So you said that they changed from the last words you just mentioned, they changed from the Brahma Bhutam. What does Bhutam means?
Bhutam is form of. So Brahma Bhutam means he claims himself as Brahman.
Okay.
So that's why we loosely say becomes Brahman. There's no becoming really involved because you've always been Brahman. But you drop the idea that I am Jiva. Now you say I am Brahman. That is called Brahma Bhutam.
Thank you.
So, sir, when you say I am Brahman, I was always Brahman. So then how is it binary? It is actually Advait. Then there is no division at all.
Yes, that is why it's called Atma Anatma. Because Anatma is really not there at all. So though we are saying binary format, remember Atma Anatma is one is Satyam, one is Mithya. Therefore, there are no two things. There is only one. That is why Advaita. Yes, Lalita ji.
Namaste, Ravi. Actually, Vasana, sometimes there are times when we understand this response, what I am giving is because of the Vasanas I'm having. But there are sometimes I can be, like I can come over it. But there are sometimes, though I know the way I'm responding is because of the Vasana, there is no control. I feel suffocated even with the knowledge, and I just want to let it go. So, is that okay?
Good question. Anybody wants to answer? Nobody wants to answer? The moment you feel the need to let it go or say something, remember you have gone back into Jiva Bhava, right? You are considering yourself as a Jiva.
Okay.
There is an ego involved. That ego is hurt, and therefore I am suffocated. I must let it go. All that.
Okay.
You have to recall the teaching that I am not really the body-mind complex. So where is the question of ahankara? And continuous dwelling on this is what is required to get ourselves out of this reactive mode.
Okay.
The mind will still feel hurt. I'm not saying no. Mind will still feel hurt, but you will be able to stop the reaction. That is the best that we can hope for.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a few minutes, so let me just get into the Nidhi Dhyasana. So please sit back comfortably. Close your eyes. Today we are going to talk about the fact that most of us find it difficult to accept the past. Because I blame everybody for what has happened to me. I don't blame just myself. I blame everybody around me also for what has happened to me. And therefore, my prayer should be that my prayer to the Lord during the Nididhyasanam should be there are things which I can change and there are things which I cannot change. Whatever has happened in the past cannot be changed by me, and therefore let me gracefully accept what is choiceless, what cannot be changed, I must accept. I should not blame myself for what has happened to me. I should not blame others also. Blaming, if you look at it, if you analyze it, you want to change the past when you want to blame something. How can the past change? The very word past means it has gone. It is no longer amenable to any change. And therefore, it is futile to blame, because blaming is a desire to change the past. And therefore, I should gracefully accept what I cannot change. And when I gracefully accept what cannot be changed, I should slowly let go of my resentment, of my anger, and of my dissatisfaction. How do I do that? By accepting that I cannot change the past. I should remember that whatever has happened was because of my prarabdha, my pain, my past. What has been the result? Has resulted in my understanding of the fact that it is the past which is responsible for my present. And therefore, every experience in my past, including my pain, what is the present result? I have come to Shastram, I have come to Ishvara. In the initial stages, when I come to Ishvara, I seek his help to make me accept what I cannot change. I understand that I can only ask His help to make me accept what I cannot change, because even Ishvara cannot change the past. I cannot change what has happened, nor can anybody else, nor can Ishvara himself change the past. And therefore, I acknowledge that this past cannot be changed at all. And therefore my prayer is, please accept whatever I cannot change. So there are a lot of things which I cannot change in the past. My parents' behavior, my father's anger, my mother's omissions and commissions, my father's indifference to me, his lack of care, his mishandling of the relationship with my mother, his drinking, all the fights between my parents, the confusion at home, my being left alone, not cared for, not loved. These are all the problems which are there in the past, for which I have always had resentment. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe these things were not there. But this is how I felt. Therefore, I cannot change what has happened. Therefore, my prayer is, O Lord, please help me accept gracefully what I cannot change. Don't try to forget the past. Don't try to forget the past. It was part of your life. Don't try to bury the past. It was part of your life. Forgetting the past, burying the past solves no problems. Because at some time, you will find that a buried past suddenly pops up. A forgotten past suddenly pops up. And therefore, I should never try to bury, I should never try to forget the past, because you cannot. What should you do? Gracefully accept the past. It was there, it caused me pain, but I have moved on. I have come to be objective. I have seen Ishvara's order, the way in which the laws of Ishvara function. I know that nobody can go against those orders, against those laws. Whatever has happened to me has happened to me in accordance with those laws. Ishvara has my benefit at heart, and therefore I must learn that whatever experiences I have had, I have to learn from those experiences. Instead of resenting them, I have to learn from those experiences. And unless I learn to accept the past, learning is not possible. So please help me, O Lord, to accept gracefully what I cannot change, to learn whatever you want me to learn from those experiences, and to grow in my spiritual path. Om Tat Sat.
Om Tat
Om
Sat.
Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Acharya.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Dachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you, everybody.
Om Namah Shivaya.